still form part of the continuum. It's just that many familiar games are not interesting from a game theory perspective, either because they're too dependent on random chance with no strategy, or because they're too complex for strategies to be developed. It's worth spending a moment on the strategy word here, as it is often misused, and game theory has its own specialist meaning for the term. A strategy is a plan to achieve a goal. However, as J.D. Williams pointed out in his light-hearted 1960s book, The Complete Strategist, in game theory, a strategy designates any complete plan. In general usage, a strategy is usually a best effort to achieve something. But in game theory, a strategy is any complete plan for playing the game, no matter how good or bad. In chess, for example, your strategy could be to always play the piece closest to the bottom left-hand corner of the board that is available to move. Such a strategy would pretty much guarantee losing, but it would nevertheless be a strategy in game theory terms. Much early game theory was developed to deal with situations where two players went head-to-head in an aggressive win-or-lose situation. This was the circumstance, for example, facing American military strategists when applying game theory to nuclear warfare, and whether it was better to be reactive or preemptive when it came to nuclear strikes, arguably more a lose-lose scenario than win or lose. However, the most valuable impact of game theory in recent years has been in the design of specialist mechanisms to deal with spectrum auctions. Selling a spectrum. The word spectrum suggests that these auctions are something to do with selling off an array of colours, but here a different part of the electromagnetic spectrum is under consideration. Not visible light, but the segment of radio frequencies available for, usually, mobile phones and Wi-Fi. Historically, radio bandwidth was primarily used for broadcast radio and TV, with a relatively small number of transmitters sending signals to many receivers. Because of overlaps between different transmitters and applications, and because of the crude technology originally used, wide swathes of the radio bandwidth were allocated to broadcasters. The exact definition of radio is a loose one. The electromagnetic spectrum is divided up by frequency or wavelength. Wavelength is the distance between equivalent points in the repeating cycles along the progress of a wave. Frequency is the number of such complete cycles of the wave that take place in a second. Frequencies on the entire electromagnetic spectrum, which includes radio, microwaves, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, X-rays and gamma rays, vary from a handful of hertz, cycles per second, through to hundreds of exahertz, where an exahertz is 1,000,000 trillion hertz. The equivalent wavelengths run from hundreds of thousands of kilometers to picometers, trillionths of a meter. Radio comes at the bottom end of the spectrum, with the lowest frequencies and longest wavelengths, at its highest reaching wavelengths of about 1 centimeter and frequencies of hundreds of gigahertz, a gigahertz is 1,000,000,000 hertz, though signals at the top end of the radio range are often referred to as microwaves, first employed for communications and radar, but now also used in the eponymous ovens. What has transformed the need to squeeze every bit out of the radio spectrum is the growth of two applications, cellular phones and wireless internet. Worldwide cell phone ownership has risen dramatically. In the mid-1990s, around 5% of the world's population had access to a cell phone. By 2015, the 100% mark had been passed. It might seem that only sports people and competitors in TV game shows claim to be able to give more than 100%, but this value reflects the fact that in many countries today there are more cellular subscriptions than there are members of the population, both from owners of multiple phones and devices other than phones that use cellular data. More recently, the use of Wi-Fi to connect devices to the internet has become ubiquitous, while those multitudinous cell phones continue to eat up more and more bandwidth of the radio spectrum. Bandwidth describes the range of frequencies or wavelengths that a radio broadcast uses. The more data a device needs to access, the greater the bandwidth. As smartphone technology has transformed cell phones from being simple communication devices to powerful pocket computers, they're starting to use the high bandwidth flows of data needed to stream videos and perform other data-intensive tasks. This requirement has seen a rapid transition through 3G, third generation, and 4G connections, with 5G now becoming available, providing data rates that had previously